If you were like me and played Diablo Immortal with zero expectations, you might have been pleasantly surprised. The point of this video is not to bash Diablo Immortal, as the game actually came out alright. The combat mechanics actually feel good, the game is smooth, and has a learning curve that'll have you feeling like a pro within the first hour. Additionally, in the lore, it takes place after Diablo 2, so we get to see and interact with some of the NPCs that we all come to know and love. But some devoted players of Diablo 2 will likely always prefer that title over Diablo Immortal. Here are some of the most popular reasons from the community as to why. The Diablo 3 vibes. Diablo fans have long appreciated the seemingly gothic feel of the franchise. D2 Resurrected nailed this in its recreation of that classic, and even D4 is beginning to look like the dark dungeon crawler we all know and love. But one Diablo game stands out like a sore thumb graphically when compared to the rest, and this is D3. The World of Warcraft color vibes seemingly had some influence on D3, and while WoW is a classic Blizzard game in and of itself, many players appreciated the feel of the two franchises being different. This was one of the biggest criticisms of Diablo 3, and Blizzard has brought those D3 color vibes right back into Diablo Immortal, unfortunately to the dismay of many Diablo 2 fans. And speaking of Diablo 3, some unfortunate similarities exist as well in the stats and skills. Diablo players have become accustomed to designing weird off-the-wall builds in games like Diablo 2. The lack of hard stat points was reminiscent of Diablo 3, and not obtaining them at each level in order to customize your character was a bit of a letdown. Even many of the attribute skill points are not necessarily consistent across different classes, so they have no real unique meaning for the most part. Especially when you combine this with the fact that a lot of the items that you find in-game are tailored towards your class and your experience. You won't necessarily find items that you could trade or give to one of your other characters. The classic sentiment of Diablo 2 players has long been, if I want to completely fuck up my build with my own stupidity, then by golly, I want to be allowed to do so. Build customization has always been important, but this just works entirely different in Diablo Immortal. Even the skills just kind of level up on their own. Or maybe you have some control over it based on the ones that you use. I don't fucking know. Regardless, build diversity is something you likely won't have much control over in this game. In fact, you might not be making many decisions of your own volition because hand-holding. It's difficult to get immersed right away in a game when it's always telling you where to go and what to do. We saw a lot of this in Lost Ark. Alternatively, we see games like Breath of the Wild and Elden Ring with wide open environments where the game basically says, here, you figure it out. Even in Diablo 2, you just sort of step out into the moor with little to no direction, picking up pieces of the lore as you go and as you wish. While the greatest games have often found a good balance for these two things, others tend to err on the side of hand-holding these days, and Diablo Immortal is no exception. Even item decisions are practically made for you, with the green arrows signifying which one is better. From the golden footprints we quickly become accustomed to looking for, to the slow unveiling of how to use certain features in the game.
Is this just literally showing us how to socket something into a fucking weapon?
While this is really good for a first playthrough, it really makes a second play or a replay value of the game a little less desirable. It quickly becomes a mad dash to the next super important thing to do before players find themselves mentally worn out. When you combine this with the fact that starting up a new character requires you to go through all of this again, Diablo 2 players really start to miss those G-rushes through the game. Next up, items. Trading or even transferring items between characters has been an important piece of the Diablo experience ever since Diablo 2. Some games have stepped away from allowing free trade, mainly because some players out there complain about RMT or trading in-game items for forum gold or things like that. To many players, that isn't necessarily a huge deal, but regardless, free trade is speculated to be one of the biggest reasons D2 is still around to this day. This is not necessarily the case in Diablo Immortal. Take all of that freedom and throw it in the trash. Not only can items not be traded in Diablo Immortal, but you can't even transfer them to your other characters, because items generated in-game are specific to your class and build. While this is a convenient trade-off, it neuters an important aspect of the game to a lot of players. Additionally, there are built-in mechanics that Blizzard would prefer you to use instead of trading for items elsewhere. And that's it. That's all the reasons. There's no more. Thanks for joining me. It's been a good video. Oh, that's right. There's another one, isn't there? The monetization structure of Diablo Immortal is very similar to Magic the Gathering Arena. Daily rewards and challenges mixed with the convenience of saving time and gaining opportunities by paying money. While you can't fault a company for wanting to make money directly from the games they make and services they provide, especially if you're playing a free-to-play game, Diablo Immortal was the first time Blizzard monetized a Diablo game with in-app purchases. While players can play through the game and enjoy it without spending a dime, the true end game for many Diablo players is PvP. Here in Diablo Immortal, you almost certainly have to pay money in order to compete with the top dogs. It's funny because for years I've seen comments on my PvP videos in D2R from nubs saying no one cares about PvP, but suddenly, when the pay structure of a Diablo title only affects PvP, everybody and their mother's dueling. The real joke here is that this shouldn't really come as a surprise. We knew this was going to be a thing in Diablo Immortal, but also, people have been paying money for in-game items for Blizzard titles for years, since way before it was worked in as part of the actual game. Any PvP game will undoubtedly become pay to compete, in my opinion. And pay to compete might actually be a more appropriate term. Even in D2R, if you want to contend with the big dogs, you're gonna need some items, but it doesn't guarantee that you'll win. Again, whereas there's no free trade in the game and items are bound to your character in Diablo Immortal, your only choice is to either grind for months or even years to get the best items, and even then, you'll never be able to obtain certain gems. In that regard, the players who pay at the store will always have a little bit of an edge in competition when it comes to PvP. The silver lining here is that if you're just cruising through the game for the story or only interested in PvM, you likely won't have to spend a dime. Blizzard knows this, and it's likely not those types of players that they're going after as their target audience here. If you want to dominate the PvP arenas, obtaining the highest Paragon levels, and growing your EP another 6 inches, you're gonna have to pony up some money. Regardless of this new pay structure, the game does feel very smooth and came out extremely nice. It would be great, however, with all of these suggestions if they could be somewhat adapted, especially the pay-to-win structure, much like Lost Ark did, sort of preferring the free-to-play players. But as the game stands at its current state after release, those are the biggest concerns by players, and some of the biggest reasons as to why Diablo 2 players don't necessarily have the best taste in their mouth about Diablo Immortal. Be that as it may, I actually think Diablo Immortal has a lot of potential. And I'm not just saying that because Blizzard sent me that dope merch behind me. It only has this much to do with it. Considering how responsive the Blizzard team has been in recent history to the concerns of its players and its community, the concerns that we talked about today are things that are easily changeable, and it's fair to assume Blizzard might actually work towards making the best version of Diablo Immortal as time goes by. If not for this title, definitely taking all of these concerns into consideration for Diablo 4. I really hope that comment ages well.